Hello, my name is William Sommers. I'm a cradle Episcopalian and was baptized at St. David's when I became a member of the church. My family lived at 824 Canterbury Hill, and I attended the day school starting the first year it opened. I have early memories of the day school, and two of the ladies I will list in a little while were superintendents of the day school. I remember my mother and father were strong supporters of the day school and of the church. My mother used the grounds of the church land to discipline my brother and myself when we misbehaved by clearing out all of the rocks in the fields which are now surrounding the church. My father served in the vestry many times. I attended St. David's until I left for college in 1969, but came home many weekends. After college, I went to law school, married, had kids, and tried churches closer to where we lived because of the small children. My mother passed away in 1982, and her services were held here at St. David's with Reverend Katie Riggs officiating. She and my mother were very close friends. After a time, I came back to St. David's after Mom died to spend time with my dad almost every Sunday. I remember Dad always sat next to Dan Russell, the optometrist that never grew up. They sat on the back row like every good Episcopalian, and when Father Littlebridge was the rector, Dan would sometimes during the sermon hold his left hand up and point to his left wrist with his right hand, indicating that Reverend Littlebridge had gone over 8 minutes. I was sitting with Dad and Dana when Susan Wilcox came up to me in the parish hall and sat down and asked me about becoming a lay reader. I agreed so long as it did not interfere with fishing, at which time my dad choked and spewed his coffee all over the table. I became a lay reader shortly thereafter. My love of St. David's continued to grow, and I served as a junior warden and senior warden when Reverend Lisa first became the rector. In 2016, I had a tingling in my mind watching a gentleman at the council sitting by himself at a booth. So I went to sit with him and listen to his story. As a result of that meeting, I asked Reverend Lisa if she would consent to my becoming a verger for the church. She consented, and I went through the training and was commissioned a verger in 2017 at St. David's. The church and church family has always been there for me and my family, sharing the joys of life and the deep sorrows of family members passing away. My mother-in-law the funeral service was here at St. David's, and my father-in-law was interned at Fort Sam Houston. My mother's funeral service was here, and my father's funeral service was here. This church and this community has always been here for us. Since November 1st is All Saints Day, I want to remember some of the saints from this church that had such a dramatic impact on my life, bringing me closer to God. I've divided it up into 3 sections. Those of the distant past. Millie Clark, who was the superintendent of schools when I first started at St. David's. Rena Dubow, who became a superintendent at St. David's Day School shortly thereafter. Dorothy and Gordon Sommers, both my mother and father. Gail and John O'Dowd, my in-laws. Gary Littlebridge, our former rector and a former bishop of the diocese. Scott Brown, our assistant rector who worked so well with children and still does today. Those of the recent past, John Brooke, one of my mentors. Lisa Mason, my dear friend and priest. John Jockish, my lay reading mentor, and whom I never forgot to remind me to try harder after every time I read after a service. Michael Brightman, my close friend. Thad Ziegler, who was my mentor when I was on the vestry and taught me how to make wise decisions for the church. Those of the present, Dana Sommers, my wife who puts up with me. Heather Marks, the lead of the Cresceo that brought me closer to God. Kathy Jensen, who makes the best fried shrimp I've ever had and works so hard to serve at Mustang Island Conference Center. And first and foremost, Anna Tarver, who is new to our church family and shares so much of herself and helps Father Brian to serve us so well. So to repeat a portion of my favorite hymn, I sing a song of the saints of God, patient and brave and true, who toiled and fought and lived and died. For the Lord they lived and knew. You can meet them in school or in lanes or at sea, in church or in trains or in shops or at tea. For the saints of God are folks just like me, and I mean to be one too.